You guys let me know when you're done. I think this hadith gives us a very good perspective on how to view the world. World. Who wants to share a benefit that took away from the hadith? Yes.
It's towards the last portion of the hadith where he's mentioning that if you attain halal world,
Here?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Cause and I think for people in college, if you do not use the means, you take it from like you use the means, and it's remember when you saw, so you always have desire for, so you're always gonna have this chase. You can never satisfy.
Okay. Good. This the benefit of halal income. That's a major benefit. What else? And conversely, the harms of haram income. Yes.
Having a righteous rich, and he'll spend that money.
That even rich people can be. That rich people can be what? Well, not. Well,
no, the opposite.
Can rich people be righteous or no? Based on this hadith.
Rarely.
No.
I didn't ask how many.
Yeah,
I said can.
Yes.
Yes. Right. Absolutely, they can.
Name
Huh? Righteous rich people? Allahu Akbar.
Someone who's alive.
Allahu Akbar. What? You see, you start putting more conditions, man.
Well, this is the last one.
No, he died last month. Khalas. Yeah, and of course, yeah, there are righteous rich people. Why not? I don't think that's a problem.
So he expected, based on like the first line, he expected his Muslims to have world blessings in the future.
Yep. And it's a sign that the Prophet ﷺ, he knew what? That in the days to come, that the Muslims will be what? They'll be wealthy. Right? They'll be wealthy, for sure.
But he was afraid of the temptation. Too much temptation.
So who are you going to fear temptation for? The people?
For my people.
For the people who have what? Access to it. Right? If I don't have access to something, then it's not temptation, because it's not there. But in order for me to be tempted by something, it means that it has to be within reach. Is wealth in itself, so based on this hadith, how would you guys define wealth? Would you define it as something that's good or bad? Or benign?
It's like a gun.
Right? It's benign. Like only a good guy with a gun can stop. Right. So anyway, so it's something that's benign, meaning that if this wealth exists, it can be used for good or bad, and that's up to. Is it up to the wealth? No, right? It's up to the individual. It's up to the individual. Yes. Sure. Okay. Okay. So you're in how it's gained. Okay. Yeah, I think that's reasonable too. So we can say that the wealth, the wealth is charged. Right. So if it's gained in a good way, then the chances of it being used in a good way are what? Are higher. Do you have drug dealers who still donate? Yeah, you do, right? And this is how many times they win over the communities, right? They'll fight, well, this guy, he donated, or he was generous, etc. Or whatever the reasons are, you know what I mean? Or for write-off, tax write-offs. So there are a number of things that it's important to understand that, yeah, wealth, I think it can be charged for sure. But if it's in a good way, it's most likely going to be used in a good way. Versus it being gained in a bad way. The Prophet ﷺ, what is he implying here? That a person who gains wealth in an illegal way, in a haram way, what is he going to do? He's going to keep chasing it, right? He's going to keep trying to acquire more in that same way, in those same means. Why did he sallallahu alaihi wasallam mention these three groups of people? The orphans, the poor, and the travelers. Okay, so their dua, why would their dua be accepted? How come, like, people with two parents don't get a preference?
There's actually
Because they're vulnerable, right? So these are all what susceptible populations, right? You know, it's very easy to take advantage of these people. Why? Because there's no one there to support them, right? So if you're the problem with, or this orphan or this individual or this child, what is the problem? What's the issue? Why do we single out orphans?
he doesn't have much support or to back or any
He
protection.
has no one to protect him, right? This is the issue with like when we talk about orphans versus a child who comes from a two-family home. If he has both sets of parents, then how's his experience going to be different from a child who has none? Right? You actually have people who can stand up for your rights. We say, and you know, we talk about the most vulnerable population are children, because many times they won't know how to express, or when to express, or who to express to. Now, if you add a layer on top of that, there's nobody who's looking out for their interests. What's going to happen? It's very easy to take advantage. Even when the Prophet ﷺ, when he talks about marrying, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he talks about marrying orphans, what does he say? He says, if you don't feel you'll be just, then what? Then don't. Like, even if you don't feel you'll be just, then don't marry the orphan. Why? Because if a man marries an orphan girl, what is the problem in this scenario, in this issue? She has no one else to turn to, right? So, but a woman who has both parents, if she has problems or issues, what can she do? At the least, she can go back to her family, right? She can go back to her family and seek support from them. Who is this orphan girl going to seek support from? Huh? From her husband, right? Ideally, she should seek it from her husband. So the husband, he needs to know himself, right? Am I the type, when I'm put in a position of authority, do I abuse it or take advantage of it? And even in the Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He talks about the husband and the wife, who do we find Him addressing more? Who does Allah address more? The husband. Why?
He's in authority.
Because he's a position of authority, and when a person is given authority, it's very easy to what?
Take advantage.
To take advantage. And even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He names an entire surah, Surah An-Nisa. Why? And in Surah An-Nisa, who does He talk about? He talks about the downtrodden, He talks about the poor, He talks about orphans. What is that supposed to be representative of? Right, protected populations. That these populations deserve to be protected. And if you have protected populations, the people who are entrusted to protect them, they have an extra layer of responsibility over them. The Prophet ﷺ had a she-camel called al-Abda, which would not be excelled in a race. Meaning that nobody could beat, like no other camel could beat this race. No other camel could beat this camel in a race. And then one day, a Bedouin came riding his camel and he beat al-Abda. And the Muslims, when they saw this, how did they feel? So So here, let me create the scenario. The Prophet ﷺ, he had this camel, and anybody who raced this camel, that camel the camel would lose against the camel of the Prophet ﷺ. All of a sudden, this Bedouin shows up. He brings his camel. He's like, all right, let's race, and he wins. The Bedouin wins. Well, did the Prophet ﷺ let him win? I don't know.
What else could be?
Or what? No, I mean, unless he ﷺ said that this is Allah's camel, and He will not allow His camel to be like, for example, Khalid, the Prophet ﷺ, he said he's a sword from Allah's swords. And what happened? Like at the end of his life, how did he die? He died on his bed. He died a natural death. He said, "I'm dying the death of a camel."
Camel, yeah.
Right? Meaning I'm just dying in like a camel's den, like how it dies by itself. After all these wars. And they said that when we were wrapping Khalid, that when we lifted up his garment to wrap him, we did not see a spot on his body except that there was some scar. So why is it that he died a natural death and not in battle? And many scholars say, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him His sword, and who can break His sword? Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can break His own sword. Did the same thing happen here with this camel? No. Right? The Prophet ﷺ didn't appoint this camel saying this is Hadi Naqatullah, right? like for Shu'aib. He said this is just a camel that the Prophet ﷺ happened to own and he happened to ride. Now, is it blessed because he saw someone used to ride it and he used to touch it? Absolutely. But does that necessitate that it be the fastest camel on earth? No, it's not necessary. But in here, he made this a lesson. And he turned it into lessons for the Muslims. And what lesson was that? That anything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raises in this world, He can also what? He can also drop. And this should be a lesson for us. That our lives are always between giving and taking. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives, what should we do? Huh? We should what? We should give. We should be generous. Like when Allah is being generous with us, we should be generous with others. But I should also what? If I know that, okay, this is the giving time, that means that what? There's going to come a time where I'm not going to get the same. So what should I do? I should be thankful during both those times, right? During one time I'm going to be patient, and the other time I'm going to be thankful. That thankfulness can be expressed in giving. It can also be expressed in saving. Why?
So you mean investing?
No.
It could be investing. No, invest. I mean, yeah, because that's because you know me. Like I'm not big on saving. I'm more on investing. But so, and the thing is, why would I save my money when I'm being blessed?
Hard times.
Because you know that hard times are coming, right? If there's a time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you, then it is upon me to prepare for those times when it will get difficult. And not just that, if I'm going through a hard time, what can I hope for? I can be patient. Why? What am I being patient for? That good times are coming. That good times are coming. Inshallah. Isa alayhi salam, he said, who is it that builds a house on top of a wave? He said, such is this world, do not take it as an everlasting abode. And it was asked of him, teach us one action that will cause Allah to love us. He said, hate this world and Allah will love you. What's interesting about some of these things is like the perception that many of these narrators, or even he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is trying to create for us in how we deal with this world. And we find that the more we try to distance ourselves from it, and the more we try to hate it, the more it what? Right? The more it backfires. Allah musta'an. Right, it tries to pull us back in. Right, so we think that we sidestepped it in one way, and then it tries to pull us in from this way. And it's very difficult. It's not easy. It's very challenging. But the trick is to keep trying. Keep trying. We're not going to be successful because we live in this world, so ultimately we have to what? We have to partake in it. Like we have no choice. And even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says it very clearly to us. He says, "La tansa nasibak min ad-dunya." Don't forget your share of this world. What is my share of this world?
Doing good, building good.
Right, doing good, building good. Not just that, the people who I am responsible for. If I want to stay away from worldly things, if I don't indulge myself, can I impose those same rules on my wife and my children? No.
A lot of people doesn't look that. They think living
No.
helps and living forward meant is over.
I don't know about that. I don't have the statistics behind that. But some people, maybe, right? I don't think everyone did. But saying that, like because like we had mentioned before that zuhud, or the idea of abstinence, or this idea of staying away from worldly things, this is a state of the heart, not a physical state, right? I can still own nice things and be a zahid. But my personal standards, is it okay for me to impose that on others? No. Right? If I've become accustomed to eating very plain food, can I force my family to eat very plain food? It probably won't go over too well. And it's important to be able to understand and cater to that. And how can I adjust some of those things? Is it okay for me to make sure that we have plain food once in a while in the home? Yes, it is. And not only is it okay, it's what?
It's good.
It's encouraged. Why? right? To make sure that our hearts don't get attached. And when it comes time to eat that flavorful food again, what happens? Right, it hits different. Right, it hits different. Why? Because you've gone from such a low standard now to a high standard again. So developing that sense of appreciation is something that's very important. It's very important. And not just that, if I deal like this with the dunya, even the people who are indulge themselves in the dunya, what is my attitude going to be toward them? So if I'm friends with people who are extremely wealthy or extremely extravagant, or I know such people, how am I going to deal with them? Am I going to, if I don't have a love for the dunya, how am I going to deal with them? I'll deal with them normally, right? All of that glitter and glamour, it's not going to what? It's not going to affect my heart. Why? Because I don't have an attachment to those things that these people are flaunting. So they can have whatever they want. They can have their houses and their yachts. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us all. Ameen. But saying that, like, we don't have to be impressed with those things. And if we're not impressed with those things, we can actually deal with people accordingly. One of the reasons the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was so loved, was because people knew he had no worldly need from them. Even when he sallallahu alaihi wasallam borrowed money, did he ever borrow it from the Muslims? No. Why? There's a couple of reasons. Number one, if he borrowed money from like Uthman or Abu Bakr, and he asked for it back, would they ever give it to him? No. Like they would never, even if he offered it back to them, they would what? They would refuse. So he did it as a mercy toward them, because he knew that they wouldn't give it back. What is the second reason? All right. Yeah. So I think that's kind of a little like close to the first point that I was making. Yeah.
A little bit different.
Sure.
The first one, like they won't feel they do that out of love, but any Muslim in general, like if the Prophet asks something because of his authority.
Yeah.
Even if you're in a position of, like if you're a teacher.
Yep. Listen, no, I'm saying like, if the Prophet ﷺ asked for money, and even if I didn't have it, what would I do? I would find a way to get it to him. So is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and also, I mean, it's just like in fiqh, it's like the position of authority, so like the qadi, the judge, or the teacher, or something like that.
Yeah.
They shouldn't accept. In general,
they shouldn't accept gifts. Yeah.
Or they shouldn't like ask because the student.
Because they might feel obligated to like. So if I give you a gift, I'm doing it to gain social capital. Next time I need something from you.
I'm using my position of authority to like make you feel.
Yeah. Okay. I say. Oh, okay. In order to so that he will not be swayed by any rulings or commandments that might come concerning individuals.
That's for the layman.
Layman, yeah. I mean, for the Prophet, he was above that. So
So like other people, there won't be iḥyā for any Muslim.
Okay. Or have expectations, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes if we give something to someone, we might do it with an ill intent. Not to say, I mean, but you can't ascribe that to the companions either. So it's kind of tough. Okay.
So you're asking.
So I'm asking why? Why would he go to the Jews and not to the Muslims? Maybe, right? And also to show that it's what? It's permissible, right? Because the Jews, what was their main source of income? How did they make money? Riba, right? They would take back more money than they borrowed, and he sallallahu alaihi wasallam still did business with them. Also, another reason, he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he didn't want the companions to feel like he had any worldly need from them, right? He was only there for what? For their guidance. That's it. Like, I have no worldly need from you. I'm just here for your spiritual guidance. That's it. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when he dealt with them like that, and even with our friends, like if I have a friend that never asks me for money, if I have a friend that every time we go out together, like money is not an issue, it's not even something that comes up, how much better is that relationship versus guys like, yo, can you spot me this time? And all of us have friends like that, right? It's like, yo, yeah, my check didn't come through yet, I'm still waiting, and his check just never comes through. You know what I mean? It's like And again, we've had that friend before. Do I want to spend time with that friend? No, right? Like, so when I see him or her, what am I going to try to do? Right? So I'm going to be like, yep, right? Yeah, I'm going to try to avoid that person. Because finances do have an effect on people, even if I'm wealthy, right? So even if I'm wealthy, but I constantly have somebody who I feel like is, because why? I feel like I'm being taken advantage of. And he ﷺ, he didn't even want to give that inclination or intonation to anyone. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So the more we run away from the dunya, the less impressed we will be by people of the dunya, and it will have a less of an effect on our heart, and we won't feel the need for it. And many times, like especially when we're younger, keeping up with the Jones, like, you know what I mean? Like Jones is like, it's difficult. Like you want to dress like everybody's dressing. You want to wear what everybody has. You want the accessories that other people have, because we don't want to feel left out. And that social stigma is something that is very problematic for us. Like we're very social creatures as humans, and we want to feel like we're part of something. And the moment that we fear that we're being removed from a group or from friends or something like that, we become very scared, and we do whatever we can to kind of hold on to those groups. But you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's given us the religion for a reason. Like we shouldn't have that need. The thing that we should truly strive for is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And our friendships will be built off and around that love, not for other things or just to get people to agree with me. Abu Darda, he said that the Prophet ﷺ delivered a sermon the like of which I had never heard before. He said, "If you but knew what I knew, then you would have laughed little and wept much." On hearing that, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ covered their faces, and the sound of their weeping was heard. A man said, "Who is my father?" The Prophet ﷺ said, "So and so." So this verse was revealed, "La tas'alu an ashya'a in tubda lakum tasukkum." That do not ask about matters which, if had been made known to you, might make things difficult for you.
Don't use so-and-so.
I'm sorry?
Don't use so-and-so.
What would you?
Part of the taqwa.
Don't use so-and-so?
Yeah. Part of the taqwa is smoking.
I don't, whatever, man. But here, what is the lesson that He ﷺ is giving us? Number one, if He's asked something, He will what? If He ﷺ is asked something, what is He going to do? He's going to answer. Why? Because He is responsible, ﷺ. If He is asked something, He's going to answer with amana, with the responsibility, full responsibility. And we should be careful in what? Right? Don't ask questions you don't want the answers to. Don't ask if smoking is haram, right? So here, Isa alayhi salam, he said, apostles, ya hawariyin, that be pleased with the least of this world as long as your religion is intact. Similar to how the people of this world are pleased with the smallest amount of religion as long as their world is intact. There is a piece of poetry that's attributed to Abdullah ibn Mubarak. He said, "You see a man with the smallest amount of religion pleased, but upset when they are without bread. So give up this world for religion, as kings have given up their religion for this world." Isa alayhi salam, he said, "The one who seeks this world to obey him, leaving it off is more obedient for you." If you guys have any questions on this, feel free to stop me. Or if there's one that you guys want to discuss more. Yes?
So going back to the asking questions, it's, isn't it logic, so this is probably when people are first learning the Deen.
Yeah.
You want to know what is right, what is wrong.
Sure.
How do you kind of mitigate like asking too much?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, it's a very personal scale at that point. But if I'm at a point where I'm comfortable saying I'm ready to follow whatever comes out of this, go for it. Ask. You shouldn't be like questioning is not a problem in and of itself. Somebody.
I was going to say, that applies to the time of Revelation.
Yeah.
If Revelation is completed, then
So.
it's wajib to ask a question for something you don't know.
Sure.
And the Deen especially, obviously, open
Yeah.
for life in general. But when it comes to like asking questions to like show off your knowledge or trick people or get fatwas that are like, to deviate, then that's when it comes to like acting like the children you released earlier.
asking for the sake of
So it's not asking. So the thing is, if you look at like why Bani Israel, why did they ask? Many times it was just to delay commandments, right? Like they were trying to get out of it. So asking to get out of something, yeah, obviously that's going to be haram. That's going to be problematic. And even this, like I think there is an application for people who are new and coming into the religion stepwise. Certain things can be very problematic for people, depending on the situations that they're in, on how to deal with family members. Sometimes if one of the spouses becomes Muslim, how they're supposed to deal with their spouse. Like in such things, it might be better depending on the question and depending on the situation, not to not ask, but to delay the question. Because even he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he sent Mu'adh to Yemen, he didn't tell him to start with like far'i issues, with branch issues. He told them to start with the basic ones. Tell them to worship Allah, tell them to pray, tell them to fast. So when it comes to fundamentals of the religion, yeah, it's an obligation to know all of those things. But for some people, that when they jump in too deep, it ends up being overwhelming for them. But the best thing to do, man, very honestly, and I advise this even for ourselves today, just two things, man. Connect yourself with the community, because at least that way, whatever answer is coming out, or whatever it is that I find out, I can find support. And that's something that's hugely important. And the second thing is like connecting ourselves with local scholars, right? So in that way, if I do have a question, that scholar, he might not have the answer, but he can get me to someone who has that answer. So these two things I think are hugely important, especially with new Muslims, right? So with new Muslims, man, they need support more so than many people who were raised Muslim, because they have unique challenges that many of us don't face or deal with. Yeah.
So when you delay the answer, won't that increase their curiosity?
I haven't been in that situation, so I can't really say. I had a Muslim family, so whatever answers that I got, like, yeah, it was difficult, but being like, what I mean, like you have a Muslim family that's around you, and they might not agree with particular implementation of things, but they're still Muslim, and as being raised Muslim, you know how to navigate communities many times better than someone who's new, to the religion. Yeah, I mean, and it's not even necessary. So people who come to Islam, it's not necessary that they were practicing whatever religion it was before. It might even be for the first time for them to even practice a religion. You know what I mean? And Allah knows best. Like everybody's individual situation is unique and different. But in summary, ask questions. Right? If I need to know the answer to something, ask. I'm supposed to ask. Yes.
So like the people following Ayah, the people that ask questions, they were the people before them,
Mm-hmm.
they fell into disbelief.
Yeah.
So is the wisdom here like don't ask questions because of the fear of falling into disbelief?
No, that's not what it is. So over here, he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was, like we said, he's obligated to answer. Every time he's asked something, he's obligated to answer that question. Yes? Yeah. One of the questions that he received, for example, is a man came to him and he sallallahu alaihi wasallam was talking about Hajj, and he says, do we have to make Hajj every year? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, same thing. He said, don't ask about things that would be a difficulty. He said, had I said yes, he said, you wouldn't have been able to do it every year.
So how do you, I guess, make sense of like the following ayah
Yeah.
in terms of like the people before they fell into disbelief, they came to disbelief, they were disbelievers as a
Mhm.
result of their asking that?
Yeah, I'd have to see a specific case instance for that. But why did those Jews, they're questioning, why was it problematic? Not just out of arrogance. Again, the idea was that they wanted to delay fulfilling the command.
loopholes.
Right? Or looking for loopholes. Like the loopholes are things that they created. But anytime they would ask questions, they're like, oh, what color is it? Where is it? How is it? How big is it? Because when it was time to slaughter the baqar, what was the purpose of them asking those questions? They're just not trying to do it. They were trying to, but in the end, what happened? They ended up actually making it more difficult for themselves. So just delaying orders is the same thing. And there's a huge parallel between this and sometimes when our parents ask us to do things, right? We'll be like, oh, well, okay, where do you want us to throw it away? Or right? Like, well, how do you want me to clean your room? Why am I asking? Huh?
To kick the can down.
Right, exactly. I'm just trying to delay fulfilling the command. It's not because like, do I not know how to clean my room? Like really? Like, you know what I mean? Like, or do I not know how to like throw out the garbage? Like these are all things that we know. The reason we ask those questions is because we're trying to delay fulfilling those particular commands. And it's the same thing, with the story of the Jews that I mentioned in the Quran. Isa alayhi salam, he said, apostles, be pleased with the least of this world as long as your religion is intact. Similar to how the people of this world are pleased with the smallest amount of religion as long as their world is intact. Allah revealed to Musa, Musa, do not rely on love of this world, for you will not come to me with a greater sin than it. Musa passed by a man who was crying, and on his way back he still found him crying. Musa said, O Lord, your slave weeps out of fear of you. He said, now this is the person who was crying, son of Imran, had his mind shed as his tears, or this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala response to Musa. He said, Ya Ibn Imran, O son of Imran, had his mind shed as his tears do, and had he raised his hands until they fell off his body, he would not be forgiven due to his love of this world. And we had said before, love of this world is what? Is it something that I can completely remove? No. It is something that is? It's part of us, right? It's something that is natural. So what is the purpose of such narrations? Huh? Right, there's a balance. Remember, and this is something that we had started from the beginning and from the first book that Ghazāli had talked about. He had talked about what? Resetting the scale. And in order to reset a skewed scale, what do I need to do? I need to pull it